I'm leaving here to go and see about my man. And ain't nobody, not even God himself, gonna stop me. There is no planet in this galaxy that I'm willing to live on without your son. I love that man. I love him for real. And I'll take out or down anybody who stands in the way of us living together happily ever damn after. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Genesis, Part 16. When we left off, it was Saturday. The round table had convened and concluded. Manny, Catherine, and Sincere were on their way to Miami. Star, codenamed Eve, had ran up a bag on Terry, and she was waiting patiently in her hotel room at the Chateau in Jersey for Terry to finish his business so that they could reconvene at the hotel bar. At that same time, Saint was having his second successful date with the mystery woman, Tori, and Angela was meeting with Mom Brenda, Mom Joyce, Mrs. Ali, and Chantal. They needed to be informed about the threat against the family as a result of Miss Burney's attack, without receiving all of the personal details of that attack from anyone other than Miss Burney herself. So when Angela said, if you get any strange phone calls, odd text messages, see or hear anything that doesn't seem right, you've got to let Q know immediately. I'll be here to help with the kids on Monday, because I don't think that Miss Burney's going to be up to it. Mom Brenda said, oh, no, you won't. You're almost 34 weeks pregnant. You're going to sit down somewhere. All this ripping and running and carrying on. Angela said, I'm fine, Mom Brenda, but you're going to be one person short. Mom Joyce said, we got teenagers here. We can put them to work. They can afford to spend less time on them phones, tablets, and computers anyway. When the discussion concluded, Mrs. Ali asked if it would be a good idea for the ladies to go and pay Miss Burney a visit. And Mom Brenda said, no, let's give her some time and some space. As nosy as Bernie is, she's also a private person. I'm sure that whatever happened to her was scary and traumatic enough. We don't want her to feel pressured to talk about it. Mrs. Ali said, well, you would know better than I would, but I feel bad because I was supposed to be meeting her there. Had I called her instead of texting or called her earlier? Angela said, this is not your fault, Mrs. Ali. There are some lessons to be learned, though, and I've already discussed that with Miss Burney. Having personal conversations in public spaces, no matter how innocuous you think those conversations are, is dangerous in this life. You may not think that you're providing any information that can be used against you, but this situation is a testament to the fact that you just never know how somebody might use what they overhear. You have no way to know what they already know. And when they piece together your personal information with details about other members of this family, they can do real damage. Then Mom Joyce asked, what can we do to support Bernie? And Angela said, pray for her. Take turns checking on her. Call first. And encourage her, because this is not over. The people behind this have no idea that Miss Burney has told us everything. They think she's embarrassed and afraid. And they think she's willing to go along with whatever plan they have. She wants justice, and rightfully so. So she's going to go along with our plan. And together, we're going to beat them at their own game. Then Mrs. Ali asked, well, can I be the first one to make the phone call to check in on Bernie? Because, well, I get that this isn't my fault. I still feel somewhat responsible for canceling on her at the last minute. And all of the women agreed that Mrs. Ali could be the first to check on Miss Burney. Meanwhile, at Salima and Wise's house, the couple was involved in a heated disagreement. Salima was adamant that Wise was not leaving their home to go and check in on his coworker, Bree. She didn't give a darn that Bree didn't know a whole lot about the family members' involvement in their respective organizations in the Five Families. If Bree was in trouble, then they needed to send soldiers. But Wise did not need to be going to save the day. Not for another woman, and not by himself. While everyone who was in the life was involved in the roundtable meeting, strategizing and putting together plans of action, Wise was working too. As an employee of LJ&Q's PI firm, he was heavily involved in the legitimate business. But he'd been sidelined, working from home and seeing very little action, which until that point, he'd been fine with. He wasn't typically partnered with females, but the assignment that he'd been working on required that there be 2 agents in the field and him working from home. Among his duties was tracking the whereabouts of the 2 PIs assigned to this particular case. He'd been trying to connect with Bree because something about where her location was pinging just didn't sit right with him. She wasn't at a location associated with her assignment, and she hadn't called to say that she was calling it for the day. There was also a discrepancy between the location where her vehicle was pinging and the last tower that her phone had connected to. This could be simply a technology glitch. But with all that was going on, he was not willing to leave that to chance. All of the main locations were being surveilled. The PI firm, her temporary lodging, but she wasn't being surveilled while she was surveying, because that would have impacted her ability to be incognito. but she had access to security if she felt like she needed it. Bree was one of the most experienced PIs at the firm. She'd also been there the longest. While she'd always kept it professional, Salima ain't put nothing past nobody. Yes, her primary concern was Wise's safety, but she also didn't want her husband playing Captain Save-A-Ho for his very attractive coworker either. She said, I ain't jacking none of that. You're not leaving here, especially not without security. Better yet, why not just send security? And you stay right here with me. If I can't run to New York and deal with this Jamaican issue, then you can't run around Texas, chasing behind your coworkers and following hunches. Well, I said, big gangster, this is different, and you know that. And the more time I spend here arguing with you, Bree could be in real trouble. You know I don't want that girl, and you know I can handle myself. I'm just going to check the scene. If anything ain't right, I'ma call him back up. I'm not gonna run in and do something stupid. I already called Q and asked him what he wanted me to do, and he's in agreement that I need to go and check it out. This is my case. Salima said, yeah, but Bree has a partner too. Well, I said, and she's checking out the spot with her cell phone pinged. She can't be in two places at one time. Mid-argument, Mrs. Ali walked in. The couple turned to her, and it was obvious that she was upset. Salima said, what's the matter, Ma? Salima and Mrs. Ali had gotten a lot closer since Amira's disappearance. So close that Mrs. Ali asked her to call her Ma. But Mrs. Ali said that something terrible had happened to Miss Bernie the night before at the Blues Lounge. Why, I said, see, that's why I want you to go. Mrs. Ali said, I know, but I feel terrible because she may not have gone if I would have called her earlier. Salima said, I know all about what happened to Miss Bernie, and I promise you, it was definitely not your fault. She would have gone whether you went or not. She had no reason to suspect that there was going to be an issue. And the only reason why she was alone is because they sent somebody to set the alarm off at Vibrantly You. Because Liza is the chief of operations, she had to go check it out. When it turned out to be nothing, she went back to the Blues Club. Mrs. Ali asked, but don't you think if she knew that I wasn't coming, she would have rode with Liza and not waited at the club? Well, I said, Ma, you could, shoulda, woulda, coulda this to death. The reality is something happened, and it's unfortunate, but I'm sure the families are going to handle it. Have you talked to her? Is she upset with you? Mrs. Ali said, no. I called her, and she didn't really want to talk about it. But the first thing she did was reassure me that she didn't blame me. Well, I said, good. We could talk about this more later. I need to go. Salima said, Wise, do not leave this house. Well, I said, big gangster, I have to. I'll call you. I'll be back. As Wise left and Salima fussed at his back, Mrs. Ali asked, what's going on, Salima? Salima said, your son is being hard-headed, and he's being a chauvinist too, because I can guarantee he wouldn't let me run out of here. Mrs. Ali said, Salima, you're pregnant. Yes, you two are having a baby, but he's not the one carrying the baby. And you know he wouldn't take any unnecessary risks. Calm down. Sit down. Let's talk. When the two sat down, Mrs. Ali asked, what is this really about, Salima? Salima told Mrs. Ali all about her concerns. Her husband running after another woman, potentially putting himself in danger. And Wise hadn't been gone a full 30 minutes before Salima got a phone call. It was Louis, Star's contact with the Haitians, the one who'd given her that dupe of Taryn's favorite pen, a pen that he had in the pocket of his tailored suit when he'd met with one of his business associates, while Eve was in her room, showering and relaxing, waiting for him to finish up his business so that they could reconvene their date. While monitoring the recording device, he heard something interesting. The Jamaicans were preparing to make another move. Taryn had connected with his contact in the trafficking organization, and their play was already in motion. The mercenaries that the traffickers had employed in Texas were already on the move, and this time it was at Salima and Wise's back door. With the information she received, Salima decided that she'd have Star continue without any adjustments to her plans. It was too late for Salima to change the plan for that evening anyway, and she didn't have time to connect with Star. She had to take action immediately. She called the Queen Mother and Marley on three-way and didn't even excuse herself from the room with Mrs. Ali. When the call was connected, Salima said, Wise is in trouble. He left 30 minutes ago to go someplace that's 45 minutes away. We have soldiers following the remaining mercenaries' every move, correct? When Marley said they did, she said, I'm leaving here to go and see about my man. And ain't nobody, not even God himself, gonna stop me. You got 5 minutes to assemble a team. Give them instructions and send them out, because that's precisely how long it's going to take for me to gear up and go. Then she hung up the phone, because she was not taking no for an answer. She knew her Aunt Bella was going to send a team of soldiers, and she wasn't going to need all the details to do it. But she also knew that the longer she stayed on the phone, the more likely it would be that her aunt would try to talk her out of backing up her husband. She'd even go as far as sending soldiers there to try to stop her from leaving. And that was out of the question. When Mrs. Ali said, Salima, I don't know what's going on, but I know that your husband, my son, told you to stay here. He's fully capable of taking care of himself. Doesn't he have security? Salima said no. Mrs. Ali said, well, why not at least call him? Salima said, you call him. Then she got up and walked out of the room. When Mrs. Ali tried to call Wise, she didn't get an answer. She didn't want to distract him from whatever it was that he was doing. So she didn't send him a text message to alert him that Salima was on her way. Instead, she followed Salima to her study, where she got the shock of her life. Salima had opened a hidden compartment in the wall, and inside there was gadgets and gizmos galore, firearms of all kinds, protective gear, and more. And Mrs. Ali was speechless. When she was finally able to speak, she said, you got my grandbaby. You've already lost one. Please don't put yourself in a situation with... Salima cut her off saying, I am not being callous with my life or the life of my baby. There is no planet in this galaxy that I'm willing to live on without your son. I love that man. I love him for real. And I'll take out or down anybody who stands in the way of us living together happily ever damn after. Salima said all of this while she geared up. Mrs. Ali watched while she put on a bulletproof vest that barely contained her huge abdomen, put clips and other tools in the pockets of said vest, and strapped on multiple firearms. Meanwhile, in Denver, True and Bosch had been reunited. Bosch was about 85–90% better. He was healing well, but he still needed to take it easy to pass the time while the two were held up in Big Wood's cabin. They found a game that they both loved and could play against one another. Neither of them had ever met another person in the world who knew of and knew how to play the Russian game Go. This ancient East Asian board game had been rated as more complex than every other game, even chess, by mathematicians worldwide, the aim of which is to fence off more territory than your opponent. A game of Go can last for hours, sometimes days, depending on the skill level of the opponents. And True and Bosch had just met their matches. They'd been playing one another intermittently for several days. True had ordered it online almost as soon as she found out that Bosch could play. And as soon as it came in the mail 2 days later, they'd cracked it open and started their first game. They'd only paused the game so that they could eat, sleep, and exercise. And so that True could write her updates in the electronic journal that Miss Charlotte was now using to connect with her. True didn't know that Miss Charlotte was reading all of her entries to Big Wood. And as she got closer to her due date, the man that she loved and believed was dead was enjoying those updates and allowing them to fuel his physical therapy and his efforts to get well and get back to her and their unborn baby. To that point, True and Bosch had not discussed the intimate moment that they shared in that panic room on Angela and Stephanie's estate during the ambush that caused them to move to Big Wood's cabin and caused the General Stacks to send in more security for True. While Bosch was at the safe house recovering from being shot, True had decided that she wouldn't broach the subject if he didn't. And at nearly 11 p.m., their third night of playing Go, Bosch decided that it was time. He said, I can imagine that when I kissed you in that panic room, it probably threw you off. True said, nah, I've seen myself without my shirt on. Bosch chuckled and said, it ain't had nothing to do with you not having a shirt on, Ma. I done seen plenty of women's bodies. True said, well, I figured that you was just in your feelings. You're here to protect me, and I ended up protecting you. The lines got a little blurred, but I'm sure you know that there can be nothing between us. I'm sure you're too smart to cross that line. Bosch said, you're wrong. Well, you're right. I probably was in my feelings. It was a tense situation, and I'm not usually the one being saved. At least not under those circumstances or by women. Don't get me wrong. I've worked with plenty of women. I got a woman on my team. She a monster. True said, then you should have no problem keeping it professional, right? Bosch said, at this point, you know more about me than anybody else that I work with. I doubt that Stack sent me to be your security, and he didn't tell you a little about me too. True said, you didn't answer my question. Bosch said, I'm getting there. I promise. Most people think they know me, but all they really know is what other people say about me. And that's not the same thing as knowing me. You shared quite a bit about who you are with me. I've heard some things about you too. I know they don't call you the truth for nothing. Just like they don't call me Brutal Bosch for nothing. I'm not looking for a girlfriend. And if I was, I wouldn't set my sight on another man's girl. Yeah, tragedy took your man away. But this game isn't the only thing we have in common. I'll never really be over losing my girl and my baby. And you'll never really be over losing Big Wood. Any man trying to follow behind him is going to have some tough shoes to fill. And he always going to be dancing in the shadow of a ghost. On top of all that, you carrying that man's child. Soon enough, you're going to give birth. And your son is going to be your main priority. You got a million reasons not to want to start anything new, to not let anybody get too close, to not take anybody too serious. I don't know which one of us has more experience with getting our needs met while maintaining our distance. But you need to know that I'm a man who honors my commitments, even when I'm no longer in the same mood I was in when I made them. I'm committed to the Lopez family because they was there for me when I ain't have nothing and nobody. I'm committed to making sure that you're safe, being here with you until you give birth and afterwards until you no longer need me to play Robin to your Batman. I can keep it as professional as you want me to, as long as whatever that looks like doesn't require an apology from me for that kiss, because I can't give you one. It wasn't a mistake. I didn't do it under duress, and I don't regret it. I don't know how you see it, but how I see it, those two commitments did not include a requirement that you and I remain chaste in one another's company. Don't misunderstand me. Had I made that commitment and your man was still alive, I keep my hands and my lips to myself. But I don't feel no loyalty to dead men as it pertains to busting they shorties down. The only thing, and I mean the only thing, keeping me from lifting you out of that chair, carrying you into your room, and taking you for a ride on this magic school bus is the fact that I don't have your permission. So if you want me to remain professional, you're going to have to take a very firm position on where you stand, both verbally and non-verbally. True said, yeah, you're going to have to elaborate because no should just mean no. Bar said, oh, it does, but yes means yes as well. True said, huh? Bar said, I don't do inconsistencies. If you are not open to exploring one another, no strings attached, then you need to say that. But you also need to stop looking at me like the weather just broke and the Mr. Softy ice cream truck pulled up in your neighborhood. And True bust out laughing. Bosch continued saying, and if the answer is yes, you need to say that. And while I ain't gonna have no issue with you changing your mind, because you're free to do that. When we get going, it can't be no holding back. If you giving it to me, I'm gonna need all that. True said, hold on. I'm not saying yes, but I told you that the last time I even attempted to go all the way with a man who was not this baby's father, my son was not going. I've been in pain. I was in preterm labor, so I know pain. And it wasn't even like that. Hell, I've gone toe to toe and round for round with Big Wood doing mixed martial arts. And that man was 6'5" and over 250 pounds. We both had on gear, but he never pulled a punch. So you can believe I felt all that. And that does not compare to the unprovoked pain that this little boy put me through. And that pain lasted hours after it was over. And it was over before it even got good and started. Bosch chuckled and said, now that's a different story. I'm not going to do nothing that's going to cause you pain unless you want me to. And I ain't going to do nothing to risk the peace of the young G in training, especially now while he's still baking. But I ain't trying to convince you. I'm simply telling you to take a side and stay there. And don't overcomplicate things by sending mixed signals. I want you. You ain't got to say it, because I can tell that you want me too. But we can't always have what we want. I say we put this game on pause and call it a night. That way you have time to think about whether you want Bosch, the consummate professional, or you want the Bosch who holds a well-earned doctorate in the study of female orgasm. Then he stood up from the table and walked out of the room. True stood up and turned the heat down on the electric fire pit. As cold as it was in Denver, she was sweating. She sat back down because she was scared to go inside, and she really didn't know what she was most afraid of. Saying no to Bosch and giving up her only opportunity to get her rocks off, or saying yes to Bosch and writing a check that she couldn't emotionally cash. She honestly wished that she was one of those women who had a lower libido, or one of those women who, in their third trimester, didn't want to be touched. Or even better, she wished that she was the type of woman for whom a combination of grief, loyalty, and values were not only a deterrent, but also a preventative when faced with hormones and a fine man. Because didn't none of that apply to True Joy Burton. Her libido was crazy. Her appetite was insatiable. She'd become friendly with her shower head twice a day since she couldn't use anything internal that went buzz. And that was not enough to keep her hormones at bay. She'd been fighting a good fight before Bosch returned. But his presence was not the culprit. Yeah, he was fine. But this wasn't about him. It was all about her. And after 2 hours of sitting in the Four Seasons room, debating with herself, weighing the pros and cons, praying and trying to talk herself into self-control and out of what she absolutely knew had to be a bad decision, she finally just gave up, headed inside, went into her room, undressed, and hit the shower. She was going to try this shower head one more damn time. And if that didn't clear her head, put her to sleep, and make deciding easier, she was heading to Bosch's room with an answer.